In my own opinion, there is not strong evidence that there's any type of correlation between the Bigfoot mystery and the UFO phenomenon. I've been investigating Bigfoot for decades. I've done field research all over North America. I work with all of the leading Bigfoot investigators in the field, and I've interviewed hundreds of eyewitnesses. And in my experience, there just is not enough evidence to prove that there is any type of connection between Bigfoot, which I consider to be a mysterious, undiscovered hominid, and the UFO phenomenon, which I find fascinating, but I just don't think the two are connected. I think when we're talking about the alleged Bigfoot UFO connection, you really have to look at it from a sociological and psychological perspective. There are a lot of fascinating things about how the human mind works, but for example, there's something called apophenia. Apophenia is a very common human psychological aspect. All humans display some degree of apophenia, and basically what that means is that for whatever reason we want to find meaningful connections between things. And this works in a number of different ways, but with regard to mysterious topics, things like Bigfoot, UFOs, the paranormal, I think that the human mind finds it easier to digest these different topics, sometimes by combining them. The human mind has evolved over millions of years, obviously, and in some ways I think that our brain has evolved in a way that we strive to organize problematic concepts in ways that are easier for us to understand. And so with regard to things that are unexplained or mysterious to us, it seems like it's easier for our minds to somehow conflate these different concepts rather than deal with a number of different problematic mysteries. It's easier to sort of connect them in some way. I think another reason why people tend to associate sort of other weird paranormal or metaphysical phenomenon with Bigfoot is because these things happen in the woods, in the wilderness, and wooded areas. And these are obviously areas that humans aren't always in. Well, certainly if Bigfoot exists, then it is going to take advantage of those remote wilderness habitats. However, again, I think it's a human psychological question as to whether things that happen in the woods that are weird and unexplainable are always associated with Bigfoot. And I think that's another level of confirmation bias where people, if they're out in the woods and they see a strange light or something else they can't understand, they might unconsciously associate that with Bigfoot or Sasquatch just because of that wilderness, that wooded setting. They're out in a desolate wooded area, and so it kind of infers that maybe there's some connection to Bigfoot as well. In terms of researchers and investigators that say, well, you know, my research leads me to believe that there is a connection between Bigfoot and UFOs, what I found is that many of these investigators are actually demonstrating something called cherry-picking evidence, which is they have a preconceived notion or theory about what they want Bigfoot to be, and therefore they're going to focus on those bits of evidence that kind of reaffirm those belief systems that Bigfoot is metaphysical and has to do with UFOs. But what I would point out is that the vast majority of Bigfoot accounts, and we now have about 6,000 well-documented Bigfoot accounts on record, if you look at the big picture of that data set, a very, very minuscule portion describe these weird UFO or metaphysical type attributes. The vast majority of Bigfoot sightings are Bigfoot crossed the road at night, Bigfoot was hiding behind a tree, Bigfoot was drinking water. So although there are some strange cases and stories of Bigfoot and UFOs or Bigfoot vanishing into thin air, they really represent just a microcosm of the greater body of evidence. And from a scientific perspective, it's important to look at all of the data, all of the evidence, and not cherry pick those particular cases that, that we're attracted to.